seats ahead of you. Yeah, I'm always waiting for the day to part the Red Sea, get a little closer to you. I love to actually walk down there and do it, but the media people say that the lighting is what I need in order to, take it out to the media, or what do you call it, YouTube. So I can't really go there. You need to come. Come to me. I actually look forward to meeting with our sea salt members today for lunch at 1 p.m. I know it's been announced, so I just want to chat with you. I think it'll be wonderful just for me to hear you and support your needs as we go forward. Psalm 120 is our text today, Psalm 120. It is called a Song of Ascents, and I will tell you more about that title. But let's read the text first, and then let's dwell on this passage for today. Psalm 120, a Song of Ascents. In my distress I called to the Lord, and he answered me. Deliver me, O Lord, from lying lips, from a deceitful tongue. What shall be given to you, and what more shall be done to you, you deceitful tongue? A warrior's sharp arrows with glowing coals of the broom tree. Woe to me that I sojourn in Meshach, that I dwell among the tents of Kedar. Too long have I had my dwelling among those who hate peace. I am for peace, but when I speak, they are for war. It ends rather low, right? It doesn't sound very uplifting to the end. But we'll come to that point where we want to discuss the conclusion, what this is about. But first, something about the songs of ascent. So there are 15 psalms that are titled Song of Ascents. 15, starting from Psalm 120 to Psalm 134. Your Bible and my Bible, most likely, the modern Bible, supplies these subtitles or titles for each section of the Bible, and that is by the editor. For example, my Bible that I have, which is a Cambridge version, it has a title right on top of Psalm 120 that says, Deliver me, O Lord. And that's a quotation from the text, but that's a title that's applied by the editor or the people who are publishing the Bible later. So a lot of the passages in the Old Testament and the New Testament, especially the historical portion, for example, where there's a lot of dense material, you see the publisher, in order to help you to read Bible, I guess better, with more ease, have supplied certain indentation, and then there are titles that are placed there, or subtitles that are placed there. Those are not original to the Bible. Those are supplied at a later point. Well, in fact, if we want to go really far back, even the chapter numbers and verse numbers are not original to the Bible. They're supplied to you in order that historically we could use the Bible with a little more ease. But contrary to that, the titles that are at the top of the psalm, the small letters, for example, mine, a Song of Ascents, for example, that's original. So even though oftentimes when you read psalms, you don't read those titles, they're actually titles that comes with a psalm from the original text. Most likely, the 150 psalms were collected and compiled as we see them at a relatively later period in the Old Testament, probably post-exilic. These are songs that were used in the temple worship in the Old Testament times. But to put them all together as one book, it might have taken some time to get there. But the important thing is with what we call the original text of the Bible. The tough word is autographa of the Bible that is not a copy or manuscripts, but it's the original text. That's important, right? But anyway, that original text actually shows the title, A Song of Ascents. So the question that we may ask is, what does the ascents mean? Now, it's not a verb to ascend, it's ascents. It's a noun form. It's mahala in the Old Testament Hebrew word. And that word actually means, ascents means two things. One is, it's actually the movement. It's a reference to the movement of going upward. And it's a plural, right? So ascent or ascents. The movement of going upward. And that's easy to understand, right? So you are climbing onto something. You're getting to a higher ground. That's the ascents. But it also means the steps. Steps. So with those possible translations, people have guessed what these songs of ascents actually were for. Why were they titled the Songs of Ascent? What were the purpose of these hymns or songs? For example, when we worship, our worship leader, our brother DJ, does not select songs randomly. So he's going to select songs in tune with, for example, the message that we'll hear today. The dedication song especially. But even the earlier songs, the first songs, there's this song of praise or uplifting of God. Certain songs, it's a conversation between believers. It's something that we should do, we should encourage one another for. But there are certain songs that are lifting up the majesty and the glory of God. That's really fitting for the beginning of worship. So we sang some of those songs today. And those songs are deliberately selected to go into those places. So, what do these 15 songs mean? What are they for? What's the use of these psalms? So, there are possible reasons, as I will share with you, 3 reasons. And I'm going to start with number 2. Some actually said, well, in the liturgy of the Old Testament, these songs were used by the Levites as Levites created or formed. Some of the Levites formed the choir in the temple worship. They actually stood on the steps that were leading up to the temple building itself. And interestingly, the tradition says there were 15 steps leading up to the temple building. So those 15 psalms somehow represents the 15 steps of the temple, and these Levites would stand on those steps to sing these songs. Now that's interesting. That's maybe an interesting information that we could have. But is that what this means? Some others suggest that these songs actually match the ascents towards greater spiritual attainments, meaning that you begin from a really low state of spiritual life to a higher state of spiritual life. And this idea of scaling up is a very popular theme in the Greek philosophy. So this kind of idea may have kind of robbed off, and this is what it is. I initially thought that's like, oh, that's probably not great. That's not a good way to understand this. But as I read through these 15 Psalms over, I came to realize that, yeah, maybe there is a pattern there. Maybe there's a pattern that Psalm 120 is more like really coming out of the depth of distress. But when you get to Psalm 133, for example, there is this glorious picture of the anointing of the high priest with oil that flows into the community of people. How beautiful is it for the brothers to dwell together in unity? And it's a celebration of the glorious church assembly. And then the 134th Psalm, which is the last of the Song of Ascent, is really just the lifting up of hands and just raising praise to God, and there's a sense of climax there too. So maybe there's something to it, And that could be somewhat applicable to what we talk about today, that what I will talk about today for the rest of the sermon, rest of the message is, it's about some sort of movement. It's about a spiritual pilgrimage that we are to set out. So some affinity in this possible reason. But most likely, and historically this is true, these are the songs for the pilgrims who ascended to Jerusalem. And they were required to do this, right? 3 times a year. Let me read that passage, Deuteronomy 16:16. That's a misnumber, 16:16. 3 times a year, all your males shall appear before the Lord, Yahweh God, at the place that he will choose, namely Jerusalem, that turns out to be, at the feast of unleavened bread, and that's very close to Passover, at the feast of weeks, okay, and it's 7 weeks of 7, and that's very close to Pentecost. 7 times 7 is 49. I really struggle with math these days, but it's 49, isn't it? 7 times 7. And then the next number is 50. Pentecost means 50, so it's the 50th day from Passover. They all fit somehow. And then the final one is the Feast of Booths. It's Sukkoth, as in some Jews will say. And that is a reference to a special feast associated with the experience of journey through the desert, but it's also at the time of harvest in the fall. Passover is in the winter, Pentecost would be 50 days later, like spring, and then the Sukkoth would be the fall. So you have these 3 occasions when supposedly all males of each household, representing the household, they are to travel up to Jerusalem and to assemble together before their covenant Lord. And these are the songs that they would sing as they ascend into Jerusalem. And it's just moving to think about it. Imagine these men, journeying together up to Jerusalem. And I'm sure in these seasons it would be, many of them going up together just because the scale of things. And imagine someone start up one of these songs, and these are hymns that they probably knew by heart, and they would all sing together as they ascend into Jerusalem. It's a very moving scene to imagine in your head. And isn't that what church is like on Sunday? It should be, like we're all driving, but as we drive up to go up to worship God, and we're not just coming to West Norriton, we're ascending into the heavenly throne room of God. And as we come together singing, as we approach the throne, that's the feel that we have. Psalm 122, verse 1, this proves it. I was glad when they said to me, let us go to the house of the Lord. Our feet have been standing within your gates, O Jerusalem. This idea, let us go together to the house of the Lord. It's a beautiful testimony of the scenes of God's people marching together to the heavenly throne room. They then are the pilgrims. They are the pilgrims. So what does pilgrimage mean? What does it mean to be a pilgrim? So I'm going to start out with a very simple point. That is, pilgrimage involves leaving behind, leaving certain things behind. The only way you can go on pilgrimage is that you have to leave things behind. You can't take everything with you when you go on pilgrimage. People have been telling me about this great pilgrimage experience in Spain as you go through the old pilgrimage path from mission to mission to mission, and it's something that you can do for a whole month. I don't know how many of you ever experienced that. It's one of those bucket list things, but I'm really not sure if I could handle 30 days of walking. But then they tell me, some of them tell me that I could just cheat. So I could kind of drive or take some sort of transportation to about 2/3 way and just do the last leg for about 10 days. Maybe I'll do that one day. The people who go through the whole thing, they lose much. They lose weight, and they also lose their toenails because they're walking every day. And I hear it's a great detoxing experience. And one of the things that I heard is that the conversations you strike in those missions where you sleep at nights, they're really wonderful because you have people coming from all different backgrounds, and you ask one another, why are you here? And someone would say, well, I just had this particular loss in my life. My parents just passed away. I felt so empty. I just needed to find something. Or maybe marriage not working out, or all kinds of reasons. People would come and try to get on the pilgrimage. And that pilgrimage literally means that you want to change something. You want to change something. You can't go to this pilgrimage with all the stuff you like. You never do it with big luggage that you ship for plane rides, right? You can't do that. You got to have a very light pack with just basically one pair of socks, one pair of clothes, or whatever, and you have to wash it every night, etc., etc. So you got to leave something behind. So what are these pilgrims leaving behind when they make the journey? One thing that we see, for example, in Psalm 127, is that they are leaving behind their family and their work. And you say, wow, you have to do this 3 times a year, and I'm sure it was very nerve-wracking for them, because as a father to leave the children behind, for a head of the household to leave their family business behind, their agricultural work behind, is it really possible? But then one of the songs, 127, says, unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the watchman stays awake in vain. It is in vain that you rise up early and go to bed late to rest, eating the bread of anxious toil, for he gives to his beloved sleep. And then it goes into the family. Behold, children are the heritage from the Lord, the fruit of the womb, a reward. So the idea here is, as they probably singing Psalm 127, they're taking the burden, the concern, and the worries about the family they left behind, the work they left behind, and they are making this testimony, this confession to God. God, you are the keeper of all my work. You are the one who gives me resource to live. Unless you build a house, laborers are working in vain. Unless you help the cause, all these early rise and late rest at night, they all mean nothing. It's just basically a repetition of anxious toil, and we will end up saying vanities, vanity of vanities. So the pilgrim is confessing, it's nothing without God keeping his watch over me. I know some of you are very anxious about your work situation. It's a tough time for everybody. Maybe you are foreseeing some very hard time coming ahead of you, and these are worries that you have. And yes, these pilgrims had exactly the same worries, maybe even worse. But they're saying to God, God, I cast my burden upon you. Family, they belong to you. Unless you take care of my children, unless you keep them as apple of your eyes, there's nothing I can do really to keep them on the right path. I mean, you may give them money, you may give them attention, but who steers their hearts, their souls? Even if they grow up to be very successful, worldly speaking, but what if they become a crook? I mean, it's something that we have to come to be aware that, yeah, God, you are the one who's keeping watch over them. It's really you. So if God says, leave so that I could meet up with you, so you could pay attention to something that you need to pay attention to, that's a good thing. More so than just leaving the family and the work behind in certain cases. For example, the psalm that we read today, Psalm 120, the issue is the spiritually hostile environment that you're leaving. Spiritually unhealthy and hostile environment that you are leaving? I'm going to ask you this question today. Okay? Are there things that you need to leave? Are there certain patterns in life that you need to leave behind in order for you to really spiritually thrive? I could even go far as to say, are there any friendship that you have to leave? It's because these friendships are not really friendships. They're just people who are sinful, that are just trying to indulge and kind of use one another for your own pleasure or your own selfish gains. That's not a true fellowship. Are you in some sort of engagement with a relationship? I don't mean a marriage engagement, but relationship that you know is leading you further away from God. Or your spiritual identity becomes fuzzy. In fact, you are more likely to sin because you're part of that community which is dark and evil. If you're not able to leave that because of your reputation or your need to kind of fit in, your need to be part of the in-group, I think the word says leave. You have to leave behind. You have to start on a pilgrimage. You have to start on a new journey to seek something different. And there are situations in life that you struggle with, right? Certain moments in your life when you struggle with the question, do I stay, do I leave? Now, please don't apply this in the wrong way. I don't want everybody leaving Philadelphia area and going someplace else. That's not the point here. But I remember the time when I had to make a big decision. Not only for myself, but my entire family. I just had a newborn baby. Our youngest was just born, only about 4 months old. And then it was a time when I was serving in a ministry back in California. Things were getting really dark. And I was completely not in control of the situation. It wasn't even about the congregation I was serving. It was something bigger that was going on. And I knew something horrible may come. It wasn't just a fear of kind of meddling in that situation, but that I was my hands were tied because of certain relationships. I don't want to go too deep into this, but I was really wrestling, God, what must I do? Where can I go? And then I happened to be back here in this area. It's interesting. I had nothing to do with King of Prussia area then. I was all the way on the other side near Willow Grove area. So for that one day, as I was basically in the area to do some work at the school for my continuing studies, I happened to be here in King of Prussia, and I got on the turnpike and I made the wrong turn. So instead of going towards the east, I began journeying to the west. I had to go to Willow Grove, but I was driving to Harrisburg. Nowadays, there's some exits. There are new exits that are made that you can use as a toll booth. But in old days, I think the next exit was like, I don't even remember exactly what, but close to 10 miles away, like 8 miles or 9 miles, all the way. And, it was the most horrible feeling I had driving to that direction. You know why it was so horrible? Because I knew that I was just wasting my time, wasting my gas, wasting my toll fees. Why? Because I have to come right back. I had to turn around. At that moment, it's very interesting. At that moment, I had this light that came on my head. And then light basically turned on. And I was so impressed by this insight, this understanding. It's as if God was speaking to me. And it was basically something like, longer you stay on it, further away you are from where you need to be. And I knew that if I stayed longer, if I just endure that, I would drift away further and further from where God wants me to be. And I don't mean job situation. I don't mean some academic achievement. I really mean what the truth is, what the goodness is. And then instant. I went back home. I talked to my wife. Honey, I had this experience. This seems to be really something that I came to understand. Would you leave with me? He said, let's go. Wow. I remember that time vividly. But it's just not about that one occasion. It's really about our everyday life. Because even today, I'm sure, in my own familiarity of things surrounding me, where God is telling me, leave. Leave that sin, that sinful habit that you developed. Leave it. Leave that behind. So Psalm 120 is about leaving behind the world dominated by liars and peace breakers or war makers. And that's what we read in Psalm 2. Deliver me, O Lord, from lying lips, from a deceitful tongue. And verse 6 says, too long have I had my dwelling among those who hate peace. I am for peace, but when I speak, they are for war. It's a tough situation. It's an environment that is brewing a life of darkness. I think there are possible reactions to spiritual hostile environments that we can have. And this is a very important diagnosis that needs to take place. Okay? So, 3 possible ways. Maybe you are in a state of spiritual insensitivity and you're just numb. You're unfeeling. You don't even think about it because you have become unable to sense what it's really like. You're in hot water, but it doesn't feel hot because you slowly got there. Is that possibly you, that you're spiritually drifting away, you're drifting so far away or so deep, and in that drifting, you're not even feeling it because you have become numb? The worst possibility is that you have conformed to the worldly patterns of life. When someone cusses at you, you cuss back as if nothing's wrong with them or you. When someone's lying, you cheat him worse. Well, I'm just going to do it. Why? Because you got used to it. It's easy for you to act evilly because you have learned how to do it with ease. Because people do conform to the wrong patterns of life. Children do this all the time. But then there's the third possibility. We're in the world. We're not of the world, but we're in it, so it's impossible for us to be in an absolutely pure environment. But in this place where there is sin, where there's darkness, what do? We groan. We're groaning in the state of spiritual tension. Because it bothers you. It's hard. It's difficult to deal with this. I'm sure this is the experience that most of you are having. You're having this inner tension. It just doesn't seem right. And I'm struggling with this. What must I do? Well, there are a couple of positions you can take. One is a compromising position. And you see that in verse 5. Woe to me that I sojourn in Meshech, that I dwell among the tents of Kedar. Too long have I had my dwelling among those who hate peace. I've been here so long. Meshech, it's interesting, right? Meshech is out of blue, mentioned here. And it's a place that's way up north from Jerusalem. Way up, like all the way up, like Turkey up. And Kedar is all the way in the south. So this is very deliberate to take these two extreme places and say, I've been there. I've been so far away from God. And I dwell there too long. It says, too long have I had my dwelling among those who hate peace. Right? But then it changes. There's something more going on here. There's a confronting position where the psalmist says in verse 3, what shall be given to you, and what more shall be done to you, you deceitful tongue? So he's confronting the deceitful tongue. Verse 4 is interesting. It says, the warrior's sharp arrows with glowing coals of the broom tree. So there is a sharpness of a spear and also, or arrow, and the burning of the fire. The images are images of judgment and punishment. And majority of the people who are interpreting this passage says, well, that's about the judgment of God. There's a confrontation that is being taken here. So there's this idea of the need to leave, the idea to leave behind, right? So pilgrimage begins when you begin to feel the tension, and then in that tension you begin to confront, you begin to come to realize that, hey, I have to make a turnabout here, or else I'm going to be deeper and deeper into spiritual chaos. The second movement is moving upward. It's the movement towards a spiritual transformation. It's a movement towards God, getting close to God. It's coming near God. And that's the movement that we have to be in. This is the life of pilgrimage that we're called. And one of the great examples that we have of this, the transformation or the change of direction, is in Ephesians 4:22-24. It's a great passage that talks about the actions of putting off the old man and putting on the new man. It says to put off your old self or old man, which belongs to your former manner of life, is corrupt through deceitful desires. The things that belong to the old way, the sinful nature, what we were before we came to know the salvation in Jesus Christ. You need to continue to put that off. Put it off. You may remember me saying this over and over, that here the old man, I think, is a reference to Adam. The Adam who had rebelled against God. He's our forefather of our lineage, and he is the one in whom we all fell from God's original righteousness or grace that he has given to us. And through his fall and the sin that accumulates sins and the life that is continually born in the context of sin, and this corruption takes place. You need to put that off. You need to put off. And the putting off and putting on, this is not about putting off the dirty clothes and putting on the clean clothes. I'm sure I said it more than once here. But it's a reference to your belonging. It's your team. You need to put off the old uniform. You need to put on the new uniform. You don't play for that team anymore. If you have already switched the team to the other side, and if you're kind of spy for the other team, then of course that's a serious problem. And that's exactly the kind of picture we have here. Which team are you playing for? Are you playing for the old nature, or are you playing for the new man, Christ? He's the covenant head. He is the head that we belong to in faith by the work of the Spirit. We don't naturally simply belong to Adam anymore. I mean, that sounds very natural to be, but supernatural work has been done. Now we belong to Christ, the new man, new Adam. So we have a new uniform on. We're now not living for darkness, but we're living for light. We're living for not lies, but we're living for truth. We're not living for hatred and murderous thoughts and conflicts, but we live for peace and love. Put on the new self, which is being created in the image of God, consisting of truth, goodness, and beauty. It's all part of the passage. Do that. And then what happened? What happens after that? It's beautiful. You will hear. Therefore, having put away falsehood, so take it off. Let each one of you speak the truth with his neighbor. Be angry, but do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger, and give no opportunity to the devil. And these are very famous words, right? You remember having read this and maybe preached on. And this is the transition from one team to the other. You put this off and you put on the new self, new man. You put on Christ. Then you don't thrive in the context of lies. but you are anxious, you're maybe angry, there's this deep tension, there's groaning. You can't live like that anymore. You need to have the clarity and the purity of the truth. And I get very agitated by so many of the images that are appearing on TV these days. It's even hard to watch news. I wonder what our generation is seeing as the new normal. The truth factor is really down to very low. People are manufacturing this and that. If you are in the position of power, you're able to kind of dominate the scene, then you just push your agenda. And all you just say is that, well, that's a lie, I'm right. That's a lie, I'm right. And it's very confusing because the truth value has gone down so much. Everything has become utilitarian. It's what gets done that's better. But we don't live that. We don't live like that. Our value, the way we operate, is not based on who has more power, more buying power, or more dominating influence. You don't bully people just because you think that they're in a lower position. That's just not right. Why is that? The human value doesn't point to that. Even the early Greek philosophers knew what it means to be human, and that's clearly scriptural here too. What does it mean to be created in the image of God? There's goodness that reflects the character of God. There's truthfulness, as God is God of truth. And there's the beauty, the splendor of holiness. There's a beauty. There's that harmony. There's a sense of orchestrating, bringing things together onto the greater excellence. But much of it is missing, and people are seeing the contrary, and they're becoming numb. It's very tragic, isn't it? There are two kinds of wisdom: the earthly wisdom. But if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast and be false to the truth. This is not the wisdom that comes down from above, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. And where jealousy and selfish ambition exists, there will be disorder and every vile practice. See how destructive and ugly this is, how untruthful. This is the earthly wisdom. People may think that they're smart. They could outwit other people. They could overpower other people. They think they're the smartest one that could dominate. But that's the earthly, unspiritual, demonic thing. That's not what we aspire for. Who will speak the truth? When the world is dark, who has the light? Christians, wake up. Christians, wake up. Christians, come to terms with what God is calling us to be. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruits, impartial and sincere, far from truth, lies, and much deeper into the fairness of God's justice. And a harvest of righteousness sown in peace by those who make peace. In other words, at the end of the day, everybody will see, oh, that's just good. There's goodness. There's a pure goodness in that. There's something beautiful about it. This is heavenly wisdom. Heavenly wisdom. Brothers and sisters, you need to leave one thing and you need to go towards something else. But it takes effort. And it's okay, as we are living by grace, as God enables us, as He speaks to you by even this message to encourage you, to push you forward. You need to respond in faith. I think the tendency is that we simply drift to the comfortable place, the place that we always go. It's a really bad sign when someone who's spiritually struggling is not going to the place where there is the word, where there is the exhortation, where there is a spiritual merits and values. But they continue to drift away. It's a sad thing, because those who are spiritually uninterested are going to be continually get deeper in their disinterest. Those people who are spiritually interested will continue to go forward because they will be there where they need to be. We need to be where God's word is. We need to be where the exhortation is. We need to be where the community of believers are examining. Right? So I know it's easier to just disperse. I know it's easier to just drift away. But you got to leave the places that gave you natural comfort in order to move up to the heavenly call. That's obviously what we hear from the word today. I'm going to give you the closing remark. Now, this psalm begins by saying, "In my distress I call to you, O Lord." And then it talks about the hardship that he's having. Verse 7, "I am for peace, but when I speak, they are for war." There's a bit of frustration. I think I mentioned it in the very beginning. As you come to the end of this psalm, you feel like there's no answer, there's no resolution. But is there an answer? Surprisingly, verse 1, read it again. "In my distress I called to the Lord, and He answered me." He answered me. So this is not an open thing, but it's an answered prayer. God answered. But then the big question is, what's the answer? Where's the answer? And surprise, surprise, I found the answer in the title. It's a Song of Ascents. Meaning what? The person is not simply dwelling in misery. The person is not simply there, stuck in the context of lies and wars. But he is making the move. He's on the move towards Jerusalem. This person is already on the move from the state of separation from the Father to communion with the Father. The movement has already taken place, like the prodigal son. Remember the prodigal son, the story, Luke 15, what Jesus said about this young man who left home? He lived like a king for a while in all kinds of debauchery and sin. He wasted all the money that was given to him by his generous father. But then he fell into the depth of misery. And at one point, there's the point of turning, and that at the point of turning, something comes into his head. And precise wording is, then he came to himself. Then he came to himself. He came to realize who he is. He's living lower than pigs right now because he cannot even eat the things that were given to the pigs. But he came to realize who he is. Who is he? In my Father's house, even the servants eat good things from the master. I'm not a servant, I'm his son. And what am I doing here? Turning point. And then what? He journeys back home. Remember the story? Father is still far away, but he runs down, probably bare feet, embraces him, brings him home, places him right back where he belongs. What a beautiful story, but the story is not simply there. There's one more piece to the story. The older brother who says, "No, I will not receive him." The story is actually about the older brother because Jesus is speaking to the Pharisees who will not welcome tax collectors and sinners. Who is Jesus? Jesus is our great older brother. Unlike the older brother in the story, our Jesus is the true older brother. And he's the one who goes to the depth of our troubles. Where you are, he comes through his Spirit. In history, he came down to the very bottom. And this Jesus Christ, the great pilgrim, he takes you by hand and he leads on in this throng, the company of pilgrims, back to the Father. That's Jesus. That's Jesus. Beautiful passage in Hebrews 2. For it was fitting that he, Christ, for whom and by whom all things exist, in bringing many sons to glory, you and me, should make the founder of their salvation perfect through suffering. Jesus Christ was perfected through suffering. For he who sanctified and those who are sanctified all have one source. We all are children of the same God. in a different way, but yeah, in a way that, in a redemptive way, Jesus invites us to call his Father our Father. That is why he's not ashamed to call them, you and me, brothers, sisters, saying, I will tell of your name to my brothers. The name of God in the midst of the congregations, I will sing your praise. That's Jesus, our incredible Savior and Lord. Jesus is right there with you. Jesus is the only one who can take you. You're not alone. This is not a lonely battle. This is not a lonely fight against sinful habits in life. Trust him. Pray to him. Come to him. Seek his presence in your life. Life is full of failures. Don't worry about that. Life is full of rejection. Don't worry about that. If you stand for what is precious, that's what it matters. You're going to go forward. With whom? With Jesus. Because he's the one who sets the mark for us. Go with him. Turn your eyes to Jesus. And then, bravely, set out towards God and his higher calling. Let's pray. Why don't I ask you all to rise from your seats with me? As you stand